History remembers her as Bloody Mary, the queen who ignited terror across England with the burning of 300 Protestants. But who was Mary first? And why did her reign become one of the bloodiest chapters in royal history? Join us as we delve into the life of England's first queen, a woman torn between her faith, family, and a legacy stained in blood. Early years. Mary was born on February 18, 1516, in Greenwich, near London, the daughter of King Henry VIII of England and Princess Catherine of Aragon. From a young age, she was involved in the political competition between England and other powerful nations, and was engaged in marriage negotiations to form alliances, but none of the negotiations led to an actual marriage. Mary was an intelligent and studious girl, guided by her mother and a tutor. At one point, she was promised in marriage to Prince Charles of Spain, but the marriage was called off because Charles demanded a large dowry that couldn't be met, and he married someone else. In 1525, Mary was appointed Princess of Wales by her father, King Henry VIII, although there is no official documentation to prove that she received this title. She then lived at Ludlow Castle, while her father continued to seek a suitable marriage for her. Her life was disrupted when her father married Anne Boleyn, the illegitimate child. In the 1520s, King Henry VIII planned to divorce his wife Catherine to marry Anne Boleyn. He believed that his marriage to Catherine was incestuous, as Catherine had been married to his deceased brother. However, the Pope refused to grant the divorce. By 1530, Henry broke away from the Roman Catholic Church and established the Church of England. Due to the accusation of incest in this divorce, Mary became the illegitimate child in the eyes of the public when Anne Boleyn became the new queen and gave birth to Elizabeth, who would later become Queen Elizabeth I. Mary was stripped of her title as princess and had to serve Elizabeth as a lady-in-waiting. Mary never saw her mother again, but they secretly corresponded through letters. Anne Boleyn despised Mary, causing Mary to fear for her life, but she steadfastly refused to acknowledge herself as illegitimate and refused to enter a convent as ordered by her father. After Queen Anne Boleyn fell out of favor and was executed, Henry offered Mary forgiveness if she acknowledged him as the head of the Church of England and recognized his marriage to Catherine as unlawful and incestuous. Initially, Mary refused, but she eventually gave in. King Henry then reconciled with Mary, giving her a rightful position and starting plans to marry her off. Mary also became the godmother of Prince Edward, Henry's son, with Jane Seymour, his third wife. During this time, Mary became one of the most famous princesses in Europe, known for her beautiful singing voice and exceptional language skills. However, she was still seen as the illegitimate child and had limited freedom. When Henry VIII married Catherine Howard, Mary was allowed to return to the court in 1540. Although still considered illegitimate, Mary was confirmed as the rightful heir after Edward and any other legitimate sons of King Henry. Edward VI succeeded his father in 1547. Under the influence of religious beliefs, King Edward changed the language used in church services from Latin to English. However, Mary continued to practice the traditional Catholic rituals in her private chapel, which put her at risk once again. Becoming queen. After Edward VI's death in 1553, Mary fled to Norfolk. During this time, Lady Jane Grey temporarily claimed the throne and was recognized as queen for a short period. However, the people of England saw Mary as the rightful heir, and within a few days, she returned to London in a triumphant procession. Now at the age of 37, Queen Mary was a strong and passionate woman who wanted to lead her people back to the Roman Catholic Church. To achieve this goal, she decided to marry Philip II of Spain, the son of Emperor Charles V, and 11 years her junior. This decision was made despite most of her advisors supporting a marriage to Edward Courtenay, Earl of Devon, who also had royal lineage. When King Henry VIII seized Catholic monasteries, many English nobles took advantage of the situation to acquire wealth and land. If Mary's marriage succeeded, these nobles would lose their privileges. In 1554, when it was certain that Mary would marry Philip, Sir Thomas Wyatt led the Protestant rebellion. Faced with Wyatt's rapid advance towards London, Mary delivered a powerful speech, calling on the people to rise up and defend her. Ultimately, Wyatt was defeated and executed. Mary married Philip, restored Catholicism, and enforced anti-Protestant laws. In the following 3 years, many rebels were executed by hanging, and around 300 Protestants were burned at the stake. From then on, Queen Mary's reign became known as Bloody Mary, and she was hated by the people, while her Spanish husband was suspected and maligned. Afterwards, a war with France broke out and ended with England losing Calais, their last stronghold in Europe. For many years, Mary had no children, suffered from frequent illness and melancholy. She became increasingly despondent and desperate. Queen Mary died at the age of 42 in 1558 during an influenza epidemic. She also suffered from abdominal pain and may have had uterine or ovarian cancer. Queen Elizabeth I succeeded her, marking the continuation of the Protestant reign in England. Although the various Protestant sects had deep conflicts that led the country into civil war, Catholicism, or popery, as they called it, was still seen as the common enemy of all Protestant sects. Was Mary first really a bloody queen? Many argue that the nickname Bloody Mary is unfair, as she was just one of many kings or queens at the time who executed people for religious reasons. In fact, Mary's father, King Henry VIII, also executed 81 people for similar reasons, and her half-sister, Elizabeth I, also executed many people. Mary's bad reputation may be related to the fact that she was a Catholic queen, succeeded by a Protestant queen, namely Elizabeth I, in a predominantly Protestant country. This shows that history is often recorded from the perspective of the victors. During the early modern period in Europe, heresy, which is a different religious belief from the state religion, was seen as a form of infection in society. Almost all European countries considered the eradication of heresy necessary to protect society. The most common punishment for heresy was not only execution, but also the destruction of the entire body, preventing the use of bones as relics. That is why most people executed for heresy were burned at the stake. Queen Elizabeth I, Mary's half-sister, also implemented similar punishments during her reign. Under Queen Elizabeth, those convicted of Catholicism, especially those trained as priests or harboring priests, were considered traitors and severely punished by hanging and quartering. The idea behind this punishment was that people could argue about religion, but no one would accept treasonous behavior. However, much of Mary's dark reputation may be due to John Foxe, a Protestant author, through his work, Book of Martyrs. First published in 1563, the book is a detailed account of those who died for their faith under the Catholic Church. The book became very popular, was reprinted many times, and contributed to shaping the public's perception of Mary's reign. Although the work may mention those who died for the early period of Protestantism, the medieval Inquisition, and the persecution of Lutheranism, the persecution under the Catholic Church was particularly highlighted, partly due to the gruesome engravings depicting the torture and burning of Protestant martyrs. In the first edition of the book in 1563, out of 57 engravings, 30 focused on depicting executions during Queen Mary's reign. Foxe's work describes Protestant martyrs in great detail, although the information is not entirely accurate. One of the prominent stories is about the martyrdom of Bishop Hugh Latimer and Nicholas Ridley. Latimer and Ridley were condemned to be burned at the stake for their faith. Before being burned, Latimer said to Ridley, "Be of good comfort, Ridley, and play the man. We shall this day light such a candle by God's grace in England, as I trust shall never be put out." Latimer quickly died from suffocation, but Ridley was not so fortunate, as the fire burned fiercely at his feet, causing him continuous agony, crying out for God's mercy and hoping for the fire to burn higher to hasten his pain. Enmity between sisters. Mary was once beloved by her father, the king, during her childhood. However, everything changed after Henry VIII divorced her mother and married Anne Boleyn, converting to the Protestant faith. This relationship shattered Mary's world, as she was separated from her mother, forced to renounce her royal title, and even had to bow down to her half-sister Elizabeth, who had a different mother. Anne Boleyn, Mary's stepmother, treated her cruelly. During her adolescence, Mary endured insults and kept them hidden in her heart for a long time. But after Anne Boleyn was executed in 1536, Mary's position in the royal family was restored. From then on, Mary developed a close relationship with her half-sister, Elizabeth, who was now motherless. The complex family history of Mary and Elizabeth is one of the reasons their relationship became strained. As David Starkey wrote in Elizabeth, The Struggle for the Throne, the relationship between sisters is most difficult when there is a significant age gap, like between Mary and Elizabeth. Additionally, their fate determined them to be opposites in appearance, personality, and especially in religion and politics. When Mary became queen as a Catholic in 1553, conflicts between the two sisters escalated. Elizabeth, although she attended Mary's coronation in London, their relationship quickly became tense. Elizabeth, now the heir to the throne, was young, charming, confident, and a Protestant. In 1554, the Wyatt Rebellion erupted, opposing Mary's plan to marry King Philip II of Spain, a Catholic. The leaders of the rebellion planned to put Elizabeth on the throne, leading Mary to believe that her sister was involved in the plot. Elizabeth was subsequently arrested and taken to the Tower of London, where their mother had been executed years before. Elizabeth exclaimed, "O Lord, I never thought I would come here as a prisoner." During her imprisonment in the Tower of London, Elizabeth wrote a letter expressing her concerns. In the letter, Elizabeth pleaded with Mary not to let rumors and misunderstandings damage their relationship. The letter reflected Elizabeth's fear and worry as she requested a meeting with Mary, affirming her loyalty and innocence. However, this letter did not receive a positive response from Mary. Mary felt anger and disappointment with its contents, believing it lacked respect. Nevertheless, after 3 weeks, Mary released Elizabeth from the tower. Elizabeth was then taken to Woodstock, where she had to live under close supervision. A year later, Elizabeth was pardoned, and she and Mary continued their public relationship, although still strained but closer. 4 years later, in 1558, after Mary's death from the plague, Elizabeth began her reign, ushering in a new era for England.